Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soft Stories. I'm Stratton, and this is Pepper, and today we are going to be continuing our reading of Beowulf the Warrior, retold by Mr. Serralier. When last we left Beowulf, he had just defeated the monstrous Grendel, this terrific giant that no steel weapon could injure. And so it is after the feast given in his honor by the king and queen that we return to Beowulf once more at the beginning of part 2, Grendel's Mother. Over the misty moor, under the dark vault of heaven, a shadow came gliding. A she-monster, mother of Grendel. From the chill waters of the fenland, brooding on her grief, greedy for revenge, to Heorot she came, and broke down the door, and mightily burst the bars asunder. The Danes, in the darkness, felt for their spears with drowsy fumbling, their slow arms shackled heavily with sleep. Astride she measured over the polished floor to the wall, where Grendel's grisly arm was fixed, the fingertips outspread, spattered with blood. Fiercely she tore it from the nail, and, snatching a warrior from his couch in surly triumph, shouldered him, and swiftly, with double spoil, sneaked over the hills to her lair. But Beowulf, battle-weary, was sleeping in his chamber. Of this tumult he heard nothing. We have an image here of the sleeping Danes in the great hall of Heorot, with the grisly arm of the great Grendel affixed to its wall. At sunrise, Beowulf marched with his comrades to Hrothgar to bring him morning greeting in the hall, but the grey-haired giver of treasure answered him sadly. Ask not for happiness, for grief is heaven's decree, and there is no singing in the morning stars. Brave Aesera is dead, my counsellor and friend, by Grendel's mother, as he slept, most foully, most treacherously slain. She made off with him over the moor to her den, to the lonely land where dwell the dark spirits, by paths of peril, by cloud-haunted hills where wolves go hunting, by windy cliffs where swollen torrents tumbling plunge headlong into the misty deep, the grumbling under water. A mile beyond there lies an evil lake no plummet has sounded, the margin all along with roots entangled of tall trees. In gloomy splendor they rise, their branches feathered with frost. Yonder at night a horror can be seen, the cold flood on fire, with candles kindling the dark, till quenched at dawning to a grey smoulder. Of that dread water no beast dare drink. The proud antlered deer, hard pressed in the chase, with clamorous hounds at heel, would sooner die than touch it. Oh, weird and evil is the Grendel Lake. When stormy wind is stirring, the angry wave leaps up to lash the cloud, and the air darkens, and the bloated heavens weep. Oh, Beowulf, dear as a son to me, you alone can deliver us, if you will. We have an image here of the poor king given over to his grief at the loss of his companion, telling the tale of where Grendel's mother makes her rest. I don't know that in the first episode of this series I did justice to the artist responsible for these images. They're done by an engraver named Mark Severin, who is credited here in this book just by his last name. They're really wonderful, and I don't know that you can get the full impact of them through the video. I hope you enjoy them nonetheless. At any rate, let's continue. Hrothgar ended his speech, and Beowulf, proud youth of valiance abounding, spoke out. I am not afraid, O king. I snap my fingers in the face of death, for fame is worth the seeking. Then Hrothgar in gladness grasped him by the shoulder, and for his daring offered him bountiful reward, rings and bright armor, and treasure manifold. But noble Beowulf, heedless of gain, hastily brushed the words aside, and bade him be patient, and to the place of horror led him straightway. The king saddled his war steed, proud champion of the curling mane, and then, summoning his guard, led them from Heorot. Beside him, in shining armor, strode Beowulf and his warriors, and the wild moor was stunned with their tramping. The hills and the wolf crags rang as they marched with the clink of mailed men. By paths of peril he led them, to the lonely land where the dark spirits dwell. By the cloven mountain and the cataract madly careering, by the torrent tumbling in plunge perpetual over the dizzy brink to the darkness below. And at last they came to the lake, all lined with trees, with their plumage of frost and tangled trailing roots. There, fixed on the cliff, they beheld a grisly sight. The head of noble Eachra, their counsellor and friend, his white face channeled with tracery of red, his hair clotted and damp, mist cold, and below, at their feet, the dark water, foaming and gurgling, bubbling hot with blood. It is this sombre sight that we see captured in this deep, dark engraving with all of this wonderful black. We see Beowulf and the king and Beowulf's men, and the trees lined with frost, and too we see the head of the poor counsellor, beset by the gloom of this place. At once Beowulf unslung his battle horn and pressed it to his lips. The long, shrill note cut the clean wind. The cold cliff, echoing, replied. Whereat a weird head rose dripping from the lake and gazed upon Beowulf with stony, wondering eyes. Then another, thick-crusted, bristling with scales, his tusks all hung with weed, and dragons too, bold sea-devils, all manner of evil monster, till all the lake was agleam with eyes luminous, amazed. And now they were moving, long serpents looping the sluggish wave in slow undulation, heaving huge coils from the murky deep. And one, bolder than his fellows, came speeding toward them, slithering over the foam. The king marked him and, swiftly fitting an arrow, let fly and struck to the heart. What a wailing there was, as thrashing its tail mid-showering spears it laboured slowly ashore, slowly, and more slowly. They dragged it, dead, from the water, all stuck with steel, to their feet. And lo, when they looked again, the lake was empty of monsters. Some the gluttonous pool had swallowed, while others over the rocks with angry howling scrambled to their dens. We see here the roiling sea and the serpents within. I'll give you a better look. I love seeing all of these varied depictions of mythical creatures, things almost animals, but not quite, recognizable, but maybe from our dreams. Then, in a loud voice, Beowulf cried, "Where is Grendel's mother? Ho there, she-devil, werewolf of the lake, quit your hiding. He raised his battle horn and pressed it to his lips. The long, shrill note cut the clean wind. The cold cliff, echoing, replied. No answer yielded the deep, but the water trembled, and the wave shuddered for fear. Again he cried, "Coward! Do you shrink from battle? Must I plunge in the mere and seek you out myself?" Then they clad him in armour. First his mailcoat, hand-wrought with iron links 100 on 100, strong to guard his body from the monster grip. Next his helmet, with boar's head glaring, plated with bands no blade could bite, sparkling with jewels to light his watery way. And last, finest of all, a Danish sword they gave him, with hilt of twisted gold, of steel infallible. Hrunting, its name. A moment he stood, pondering, restless in mind, half given to gloom, then spoke. "O noble Hrothgar, grey-haired giver of treasure, I am ready to depart. But whether it be that Hrunting shall win me fame, or death devour me, I know not. For secret are the ways of fate, and her word final. But should I die, I beg you, look to my men. Give to Unferth my sword, my treasure to Hygelac, my father. Farewell." He dived into the surge. The dark wave swallowed him. Downward he sank. Many a savage monster fastened upon him, with cruel tusk and talon ripped and slashed his mailcoat, while Grendel's mother, tyrant queen of that dismal realm, laughed in her lurking place deep at the bottom of the lake. Minded to slay him, suddenly, lo, with arm outstretched, she launched upward, straight for Beowulf, and clutched him in her claw, and hugged him to her hairy chest so smothering close he could not swing his sword, then downward dragged him, deep down, to her den. When the rushing ceased, he beheld a paved floor unrolling at his feet. Under the lake, in a lofty hall he stood, whose roof, buttressed with stout rafters, upheld the weight of water. No drop from above could reach him, and dreamily, oh, dreamily in his ear sounded the far-off, oozy murmur of the flood. Before him huge flames were leaping, and horrid shadows danced in the firelight, whence issued a shape more massy than the rest, dark shoulders, towering high, like a mountain hiding the sun. 'Twas the foul she-monster, werewolf of the deep. And here we see those cruel shadows dancing on the walls of the under-lake cavern, with Grendel's mother, ready to attack Beowulf amidst the flames. There is a great sense of animation to these twisting shadows as they contort and writhe. for they too, I suppose, are trapped. Then drew he his sword, Hrunting, the death-dealer, prince of 1,000 fights. The edge of steel slashed home, with clash upon clash it dinned its greedy battle-cry into her skull, yet failed him, crumpling like a reed. Fearless, he flung it aside, and trusting the strength of his hands, seized her by the hair, wrestling, swung her heavily this way and that, buffeting and bruising the walls with her crude bulk, then bent her to the ground. In a trice, up she reared her shaggy frame, and grappling, squashed him down. Then like a dizzy sailor trapped in the shrouds when sea and heaven swing sickening past, as a sudden wave, top-heavy, grinds him down into the whirl, clinging madly, yet struggling, all the while to fight free. So Beowulf, under the whelming monster, was prisoned fast. But she, softly keening, brooded upon Grendel her son, her only son, whom long ago by the lapping water tenderly herself had suckled, whom as a babe she had fended from brute assault and loved more than her own life, whom Beowulf had slain. Boiling for revenge, she drew her knife, the broad blade glinting in the firelight, her eyes gloating, and struck home. Then surely must Beowulf have died, there in the monster's hall, under the joyless water. But his mail-coat, looped and ragged though it was, guarded his life-house, and God Almighty in his wisdom set him free. The warrior sprang up. On the wall, gleaming, he spied a tremendous sword, by giants of olden time forged in the furnace of the sun, undimmed in lustre, so cumbrous huge only a hero could wield it. He grabbed the golden hilt and, wheeling mightily, smote with all his strength. Splintering her bone rings, the blade hacked through her neck and felled her at his feet, stone dead. Then great Beowulf rejoiced. Fierce as the summer sun blazed the steel in his hand, a beacon of brightness lighting the way. Triumphant he traversed that dismal underworld, till suddenly he saw the body of Grendel lying, the shoulder agape where the arm was wrenched away. Grim reminder of old griefs. How often had Grendel, famished for flesh, stolen upon Heorot, and breaking the door, seized in his fell grip a score and more of the sleeping sons of men, and carried them home for meat. Cruel spoil. Stung by the memory, he raised the magic sword and struck off the ghastly head. Then a wonder befell. So poisonous, so burning hot the blood, the blade melted, as frost in the sunlight, or as ice melts when God the Father unfetters the prisoned flood. It wasted, it withered, till only the hilt remained. But the blood cascaded upward, curdling the waters, and the poisoned wave broke red on the brink at the feet of the weary watchers. Then Whitebeards shook their heads and muttered sadly that Beowulf, for his daring, had died. And Hrothgar, his mind clouded with a great gloom, lamented they had lost one matchless in valour, dear to him as a son. Gathering his followers from the grim headland, slowly he led them home. Only the comrades of Beowulf lingered on, sick at heart and with deep longing and despair, scanning the troubled water. Meanwhile, the prince, dragging the monster's head, dived upward. Behind him, a myriad bubbles in sparkling trail bejeweled his victorious path, and bursting, purged the water of poison. With sturdy stroke upward he rose till his hand broke the surface, his arm upheaving the huge head, and he swam lustily to land. The warriors cried out for joy, they shouted, they thanked God. They ran to meet him. They splashed into the water with impatient hands, pulled him ashore. Speedily they stripped away his armour, helmet, and mailcoat. Grendel's head they spiked upon a spear, no light burden, for 4 stalwart henchmen, staggering to bear. Then departed from those waters in such wondrous wise, cleansed of evil, now silent, without stir, of brute or tiniest wave, marble still. From that lonely land, over the mountain they marched by cataract madly careering, by paths of peril over the desolate hills and the wolf crags, over the wild moor homeward to Heorot. And Hrothgar, who in mournful state on his throne sat brooding, bowed with grief, his heart bleak as a ruin where the wind makes riot while in the wintry wood the night owl cries. Hrothgar, roused suddenly by their shout of triumph, flung wide the studded door, and beheld on the threshold Beowulf, holding high Grendel's ghastly head. The Danes gazed in horror, the mead cups fell clattering to the floor, and boldly through the hall with ringing step the warrior strode, till he stood at the king's feet. It's easy to imagine that moment, as Beowulf throws open the doors to the hall, and we see, bedecked by sunlight on all sides, the hero and his prize stride forth to greet the king. It's nice. Beowulf has a very small smile on his face in this image here. I like to think that he knows exactly the kind of spectacle that he's making. And he is not just relieved at his close escape. He's enjoying himself a little bit in the pageantry of the moment. I think after all that he's been through, it's not an unreasonable thing to do. Beowulf spake, "Lo, noble Hrothgar, prince of the Spear Danes, 2 trophies I bring you for lasting token of a glorious deed. This head, and shrunk to a hilt the sword that severed it. With proud gladness, Hrothgar received it, golden remnant of the giant's work, and he praised Beowulf and thanked God for his deliverance, that the long struggle with the monsters was ended at last. Then there was rich feasting, exchange of treasure, loud revelry of heroes. With rousing voice the minstrel sang the mighty deeds of Beowulf. And the joyous sun, bright candle of the world, soared high to heaven. The meadow by the sea rang jubilant with prancing horses, loud with harness bells as Beowulf marched his warriors to the shore. And when they beheld, beached on the shingle, the broad-bellied ship beside the curling tide, his heart leapt for home. Now was the hour of leave-taking. And he spoke, "Noble Hrothgar, of all men most learned in grave courtesy, sadly we bid you farewell. If in any way by deeds of battle I can win greater love, if over the bounding wave I hear word that neighbours oppress you, or enemies grind you under heel, then with 1,000 thanes hot haste will I speed, and 1,000 spears and 1,000 shields to protect you." And Hrothgar answered him, "O strong in wisdom, mightiest yet mildest of men, valiant Beowulf, never have I known a youth speak more nobly or battle more bravely. You have forged between our people so fast a bond that all treason and bloodshed of bygone years shall cease. Henceforth our minds, not choked with hatred like a thunder sky, but in mutual trust abiding, shall beget peace. The barren sea between us shall blossom with ships, with throng of masts, a forest winged with sail, all laden with treasure, love token of friends. And many a man shall greet his fellow with gifts over the surging water, the seagull's way." Then Hrothgar, the grey-haired king, giver of treasure, embraced him, clinging to his neck and weeping bitterly, as if his heart would break. And that moment, too, is immortalized in picture here, with Hrothgar and Beowulf together on the beach, the departing ship in the background, and all the men saddened by the loss of the camaraderie that they have developed with one another. But, like all friendly departures, it's never really forever, even if just in our hearts we're always together again. When the Danes had shoved her clear of the shingle, the warriors leapt abroad. They ran up the white sail, and the wind caught her. The biting wind whipped her over the waves. With timbers groaning, her curved prow scattering the foam, like a strong bird, the swan-boat winged her way over the great Baltic, the wintry whale road, over the long paths of the ocean, on and ever onward, till at last they beheld the shining cliffs of home. The coastguard, spent with long, weary watching, hailed them from afar. The keel struck the sand. Proud, exultant, the warriors leapt to land. And that, my friends, is where we will leave it for today. There is another part to go, and so I hope you will join me for that. But before we do, I just have a quick thank you. I was worried that starting the channel again would be a arduous process, but I was so delighted to have received such kind comments on my last videos. To those of you who have been followers of the channel for a while and are glad to see it back, thank you so much for your support. It really means a great deal to me, and I am so glad that the videos that I'm making are resonating with you. Thank you again. I'll leave you now, but before I do, allow me once more to wish you all the best, and goodbye.